What did we learn on Wednesday, or what's something that we got out of Open Hack? Met cool developers, people in the field. Yep, nice that it's local. Asma?
I've learned during Open Hack that networking is really, really important, especially like starting out and not having previous experiences in software development or coding in general. And also you mentioned like a good chunk of percentage of jobs comes from only networking. So it's really, really important to get out there early on, even if you don't really know coding yet, and form those relationships and nurture them as time goes by.
Absolutely. I think the statistics, 85% of jobs come from networking, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. And we think of networking as an event like Open Hack, but we really mean utilizing your existing network as well, right? That may be people you know. The thing about IT or technology as a field is that it's used everywhere, right? So it's not just, oh, I'm trying to get a job in programming. It's, oh, that job in programming could be in any field. It could be in healthcare. It could be in transportation. It could be in, right? Like every field uses programmers in order to get work done more efficiently. So that's something to think about of, hey, who do I know, right? Who can I get in touch with and say, hey, I'm going through this coding boot camp. I'd love to tell you about my journey as I'm going through it. Anything else from Open Hack or in the chat? We said we learned about Figma and how to begin using a wireframe. Yep, we are going to have the option of pursuing that a little bit more on the second half of class tonight, or we can decide to stay in coding. So tonight we're going to be running our first polls. If you guys are in person and not in Zoom, please join the Zoom link just so that you'll be able to vote. And I'm going to be screen sharing for a lot of class tonight, and it might be easier to see what I'm screen sharing on your computer than it will be on that crappy projector. That's where the lights are off, so hopefully you can see it a little bit better, but we'll see. Yes, Plush also added in, we learned a little bit about Kanban, right? That to do, doing, done, and how that flexible method of project management allows us to add in what they call different swim lanes or different columns in Trello, right? So the notion of being able to add in a roadblock column and be able to break up our work a little bit so that we can track it as we're going through it. And that's really important, not only when you're working in a team environment, but also to keep track of that on projects you might be working on, because there's so many pieces to engineering, to pulling off a project, that we want to be able to keep track of that. Anything else from Open Hack or Wednesday's class that we learned? Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't know how to hit the raise hand button, but I think project management of our own with the Kanban method, and then you showing us the doc settings. And thank you so much for the extra monitor, because having all those tabs open on one thing was insane. But we didn't really get much into it before the class ended, and then I felt like we had an assignment right after that, so I kind of got confused a little bit, but just wondering if anybody else felt that way.
About Figma in particular, or something else?
Well, once I got into starting the frame, what is it, the wireframe? Once I got into doing that, I kind of accidentally ended up in the mock-up area, because I'm constantly like, I was looking at your site, and then I was looking at your wireframe, and then I was looking at the requirements for the portfolio, and I think I did a little too much. Like I put too much into it, and you were only asking for something, just a basic, shapes here and there, and I did not do that.
That is totally fine. That actually happens all the time in the field, right? You'll get started on a wireframe and you're trying to get this content out. And while you're thinking about the layout of the content, you start going, oh, that would look really pretty in pink, right? And you start pulling out these buttons and you start realizing that, oh, I want a little bit more styling with this, right?
No, and
that's
I ended up down the rabbit hole for sure, because there's you know, in the YouTube video that you provided us, they have other, you know, templates and stuff. So I pulled that up and I just ended up looking for emoticons. It was crazy. I was all over the place. But all you wanted was a simple, like I could have hand drawn it, but I don't know. I'm
and that is a great line, right? Is that is your difference between your wireframe and a mock-up. You can draw a wireframe with just a pencil or a pen, right? But when you start getting into that mock-up, that's when you start pulling out the markers, and that's when it starts making a little bit more sense to use a digital tool to create it. That's
Right.
totally fine. So if you ended up creating up a mock-up, I haven't had a chance to grade the wireframes and the mock-ups yet. But you'll find that for the most part, I'm pretty lax on grading, right? So if you ended up using a different tool, if you went a little above and beyond, if you're realizing that that's not quite along the same line, but it's
Right.
above what the original expectation was, that's totally fine. You'll still get full credit for it. Oftentimes we have two ends of the spectrum for that wireframe assignment. We either have people who like draw 3 rectangles and are like, here's my wireframe, or you have people that go like all out on the mock-up and you can actually feel what the website would be like and you can actually envision it. That's fine. If you were somewhere in the middle, that's what we were shooting for. Like I said, every now and then we'll get some people that go a little under and just say, oh, I got a couple rectangles out on the screen. But if you did a full mock-up, that's totally fine. Nothing to worry about.
Thank you.
Another question remotely?
Yes, like the same thing you were saying, that I made a whole portfolio, like mock-up as a assignment. I don't know if you had a look at it, but I don't know if I'm supposed to do that, but I did it.
That's totally fine. Like I said, this is the first time that you know, you're getting a feel for what the assignments are like. And the other thing is Figma can be a lot of fun, right? Once you get over that initial learning curve, and that goes for any mock-up or wireframing tool, but once you get over that initial learning curve, you're like, oh man, this is what a website's going to be like. You know, you start feeling a little bit, you start picking up speed. That is totally fine. So I'll get a chance to grade them. I try not to grade until Monday or Tuesday, just to give everyone a chance to get them in. If you do have a late assignment or you get a 0 on an assignment, you still have a chance to turn it in. I'll get a notification when you do. So don't worry about an assignment being late. Try and get that in as soon as you can, only because attendance and assignments are tied directly to your stipend dollars. And those cards, I did get a notification last week, were mailed. So you should be getting them in the next week or two. You can activate the card when you get it. There won't be any funds on the card until about the middle of May. So we'll keep you guys in touch when those funds get fully dispersed. Are there any lingering questions before we switch over to what we're doing tonight and the rest of the week?
Yes, I have a question again. So for the Figma that I made, I just did the copy link and just submit it like that.
That's fine, as long as you hit the share button in the top right and make it set to like view public. You just want to make sure that oh, you know what? If you did it in the team, I also should probably be able to see it.
That's why I wasn't gonna see if you can see it, because I don't know if I cannot see. I don't know. I wasn't working for me.
So let me pull mine up. So in Figma, if you go up to share in the top right, you'll see there's a drop down that says anyone with the link. And if you change that to can view, then that will ensure that I'll be able to see that. So that's the share button in the top right up here. And then anyone with link, and make sure it's set to can view.
Okay, can view, okay.
Any other questions from last week before we dive in? Okay.
Wait, sorry.
One
One last
go for it.
question. Because I didn't make it to Open Hack, is there like when is the next opportunity to get like acclimated with the space?
Yeah, great question. Open Hack is the second Thursday of every month. Every now and then it moves just based off of when the organizer is available. But we will usually be taking off class for that. Every now and then we can't, like if it's a guest instructor and we're taking away one of the days, we might not be able to make it, but for the most part, second Thursday of every month, we will try our best to take off. So that we can attend Open Hack instead.
Okay.
And I did get, I believe, 17 of the 20 common space responses for the survey. If you did not fill out that survey, please do so. We will be using that information to figure out what we can do for memberships. And we have to do a little negotiating with Common Space to see how many memberships we can get and the types and all of that good stuff. But if you did not fill out that Common Space membership form, please do. And don't panic if it says you didn't submit it in Canvas. As long as you submitted the Google form, that's what really matters. And if you have a 0 for the assignment for the grade, just fill out the form and I'll update your score so you get the full credit for it. Okay. Moving on to the, I guess we're kind of doing stand up a little out of order, but tonight we're going to dive into code for the first time. We're going to start playing around with VS Code. We're going to get our files set up. We're going to install an extension called a Live Share so that you guys can see my code kind of as I'm typing it, Google Doc style. And we're going to get our folder set up and all of that fun stuff. With that said, this is probably the most painful class out of all 96 classes or however many classes we have, because some people are still getting acquainted to the Mac, which is totally fine. And some people may not have written a line of code in their life before, right? So I just want to warn everyone that this class is always painful. However, it equals out over the next week or two. Give it a little time. I promise it will get better. But this class is always a little rocky. That's why I elected to have it in person. With that said, I am going to launch a poll. So hopefully everyone has Zoom open. And I'm going to launch this. And on your screens, you should see a poll that says class for the rest of the week. In person, I'm fine either way, or go fully virtual. If you plan to attend virtually, please, or have no option and go ahead and vote virtual, but I'll give everyone a chance to vote. It should be popping up on your screen. If anyone can't find it, let me know. Mel just dropped a link for the Syracuse Software Developer Meetup group. That is the group that OpenHack gets posted in. There are also a couple other events in that meetup group. One is a WIC, Women in Coding event. That is open to everyone. It's not just women. And they hold a bunch of different classes there. I saw a class, I think just got scheduled for not this upcoming Saturday, but the one after it. Don't quote me on that. I just saw it briefly. So that's a great meetup to join and follow. And when you follow it, you should get email notifications of when new events are scheduled. Got 17 of 21 people. Classes the 29th. Is that next Saturday or the Saturday after this upcoming one? Or was I totally wrong on the date? Doesn't matter. Details are in the meetup group. And if you ever have questions about meetups, feel free to ask me or shoot me Slack messages. Is there a question remotely? Yep, go for it.
So I really enjoyed myself at OpenHack at the Common Space, and I did want to utilize it during the weekdays when I have free time. Am I allowed to go down there now, like to meet with Eva or someone like that prior to our membership?
Not unless the person you're meeting with has a membership. That is a private location where you need a membership. So I would suggest there's a list in Canvas for some locations that we recommend. Okay, Canvas, that's cool. Don't load. I didn't need you anyway. Oh, come on. Under the links, there is a section for like physical locations to meet up. I would recommend using any of the other locations on that list until we can get your common space membership set up. That should be done by the end of the week, and if not, by next. But in the meantime, I would use any of the other locations.
Okay.
With
and-
that said, if you met someone at OpenHack and they do have a membership, you are welcome to meet them there. The other thing I will say is there is a, okay, see, you guys aren't the only one who Canvas hates. Okay, there we go. Right down at the bottom of the home section, or if you go to modules under general resources, down at the bottom, there's a physical locations doc. And these are libraries and coffee shops we recommend in here. The other thing I will say is there is a free co-working day coming up. I believe it's the Wednesday after this one. And the details for that are available in the Syracuse.io Slack. So if you haven't joined that, the Syracuse.io Slack is separate from the Hack Upstate Slack. The Syracuse.io Slack is what all of the members that attend OpenHack use. So if you haven't joined that, I'm going to ask Mel to drop a link in the chat to Syracuse.io, where you can also join that Slack group. And then in the events or general channel, you can find information about that free co-working day that's coming up. I will usually try to attend that. I can't make this upcoming one, but you guys are welcome to join, especially if you like the vibes at Common Space, you like the vibes of the members at OpenHack. You are more than welcome to attend that that day if it fits in your schedule.
Just one last thing.
Yep.
So I joined the group that Mel just shared with us in the chat. Would that count as extra credit if we attend such events?
Great question. I haven't considered that. I would say most people tend not to struggle with needing the extra credit. With that said, if it becomes a problem, that's definitely something that I would consider as a teacher. Attendance in class, I think, is a little bit more important than attendance at those events, but networking and attending those events is certainly a way to show that, you know, you're engaging in the community in class and going above and beyond. So I'm not going to say yes, but I'm also not going to say no. If that does become a problem during the academic warning meetings, which are very individualized, we try and tailor those based off of, you know, where you're at in class, where you're struggling. We could definitely consider that as extra credit. And if you're getting into that territory where you're worried about your grade, just shoot me a message and we can figure it out from there. I'm hesitant to do it because tracking attendance at some of the events that I'm not at would be hard. The other one that I'll throw out is there is a event called Community Cup. That is the first and third Wednesday of every month down at the Tech Garden. That is a little less developer-y focused and a little bit more business focused. That is like I said, the first and third Wednesday of every month at 9 a.m. at the Tech Garden. That is actually in a separate tech meetup group than the one Mel posted. I will try and find the link to that if Mel doesn't beat me. Oh, no, Mel already beat me to it. Thank you. So Community Cup is another event you can attend if you would like. I will be at that one Wednesday at 9 a.m. I know that might not fit into everyone's work schedule. Totally fine, totally optional. But if you're looking to engage with the tech community, like I said, that one will probably not be as good of a fit as OpenHack in terms of being for developers. This is more for business owners in the tech community in Syracuse, but it is open to the public. So if you would like to attend that, you are more than welcome to. Okay, I'm going to end this poll that I've had up on the screen forever and share the results. It looks like most of you guys are leaning fine either way, with only a couple voting for in person. So here's what I'm going to say. If you still want to attend in person on campus, you're totally welcome to. Tomorrow we have a different room reserved. Tomorrow we have Greenwin Hall 408. So, where if instead of being in this building, you're going to be in that building where it connects. I'm going to tune into class virtually. The reason why I'm going to shift to class virtually is because I think you guys are going to start to benefit from having your second monitors. So if you want to come in person, tomorrow we do have that room reserved. And then Wednesday and Thursday, we are back in this room. With that said, I'm going to plan on teaching virtually. And if you guys want to come in and still use the space, you're totally welcome to. If you want to see what classes like virtually and decide on Wednesday and Thursday whether you want to come in, that's totally fine. But we're gonna try with our first virtual class tomorrow. And then it's up to you guys wherever you want to tune in. Sound good? Cool. With that said, we are going to dive in for the first time to using VS Code. So does anyone not have VS Code installed yet? Okay, so I'm just going to briefly go over that install step. If you open up a new browser tab and just do a search for VS Code, and hit enter on that. If you already have this installed, don't worry about it. Make sure that you are getting the code Visual Studio version. We're not downloading Visual Studio. We're downloading Visual Studio Code. So you're going to go ahead and hit that download button. And then over on the right side of the screen here, it may be tempting to hit this big blue button. What you actually want is the Apple Silicon version. If you have installed this already, don't worry, you don't need to reinstall the Silicon version. VS Code is smart and will automatically adjust based off of your operating system, but we're going to hit that download button on Apple Silicon. That will start the download. And we'll give that just a minute to finish. While that's going through, we can get started. This is for everyone. I have multiple desktops set up. So remember, if you take 3 fingers and swipe up, that gets you into your what they call mission control view. And then up at the top, you can hit the plus button for another virtual desktop. You don't need to use virtual desktops. If you are someone who minimizes windows or just kind of shuts them out of the way, that's totally fine. But because I have this second virtual desktop open, I can use 3 fingers to swipe over to get into that virtual desktop. And now on my desktop, I'm going to right click. So 2 fingers on the trackpad, push down like you're clicking, and I'm going to go to new folder. And I'm going to call this C5-mycode. In general, we don't want to put spaces in our file names because as we're programming, spaces are a little bit trickier to deal with. That won't be a problem for tonight's class or for the next couple weeks. But as we start working with the terminal and the back end, we'll find that spaces are actually much harder to input and type when we're working with file paths. So I did that all in lowercase, the letter C, the number 5-mycode. You can call it whatever you want, but I recommend putting no spaces in the file name. Uppercase, lowercase is fine, just no spaces. So if I'm going to go ahead and hit the enter button on that, and that's going to create my new blank folder there.
Can you repeat that folder process again?
Yep. You're going to get over to your desktop, whether that's minimizing some windows, or if you want to use virtual desktops, you can use 3 fingers and swipe up. That brings you into mission control view. And then if you need another virtual desktop, you can hit this plus button in the top right corner, and that will bring you into the new virtual desktop. From there, you can click on the desktops to switch back and forth, or you can use 3 fingers to swipe left or right, and that will switch you between the different desktops. From there, any blank space on your desktop, you're going to right click, which is using 2 fingers on the trackpad, and click on new folder. And then once you hit new folder, you can go ahead and name that C5 my code. With it, I use the dash in between. Anyone need help with folder creation? What?
How do you stay on your screen all the time? I love my screen thing.
Oh, that's because you're using Stage Manager. So I believe if you go System Preferences and then do a search for Stage Manager, there's an option under Customize right here. And there you go. Okay, we're going to switch back to our VS Code install. So I'm going to click on the zip file here, and that will open it up for me like this. Now, this is very tempting because you see VS Code here in the downloads folder, and you're like, rock and roll, let's use it. And you double click and open it. Abort. Terrible, terrible idea to open any application from the downloads folder. What you want to do is grab this icon and drag it into your applications folder over here on the right. And when you let go of that, if you get a pop-up that says a newer item already exists, you can hit stop. You already have it installed there. But the important thing is that you can go to the applications folder, scroll all the way down to the bottom, almost the bottom, and make sure, I lied. It's not the bottom, is it? No, it should be the bottom. Visual Studio Code. Make sure Visual Studio Code is inside your applications folder. Now you can, if you double click on that, you'll notice it's kind of in this middle section of the doc, right? And if you want to move that into your doc so it's permanently there, so every time that you go to open it, you're opening it from the right spot, you can take this icon and just drag it over into the left part of the doc. What that's going to do is that when I quit my Visual Studio Code, you'll notice that that stays in the doc for me. So now whenever I go to open VS Code, I can just click on that icon in my doc and have it pop open. Anyone need help with VS Code? Sure, you're always launching from the applications folder or from the icon in your doc. We never, ever want to run an application directly from the downloads folder. It's a long story, but basically when you move an application into the applications folder, you're giving it more runtime permissions so that the CPU and the operating system can more effectively manage it as an application. When it's running in the downloads folder, it's running under your user account instead of at like the operating system level. And because of that, especially with programs related to coding, it gets a little funky and you'll have file permissions errors and you'll be, it just feels buggy and you won't be able to quite explain it. I promise you, I will catch at least one of you throughout the cohort will have it running from their applications folder and not realize it. And that just causes all kinds of weird bugginess if it's not in applications. You can delete it if you want. It doesn't take up a ton of space, but if you want to, you can just grab it and drag it into your trash can. You can actually, if it didn't move your icon, your VS Code icon, you can also drag that to the trash as well. Okay, do we all have VS Code open? Go ahead, Goggin.
Doesn't the slash in the folder's name cause a problem in the like run when you have to grab like an image or something?
It will. Slashes, underscores and dashes are fine. Slashes and spaces we try to avoid. Yeah.
Okay, I just did it. I'll change it. Oh.
What's that?
I made it like a straight name, like C5 my code, instead of like putting dash or anything in there.
That's fine. Yeah, dashes and underscores aren't too big of an issue. It's just the spaces and slashes that cause problems.
Got
Okay.
it.
So in VS Code, this is a common mistake that we make. So we're going to go very slow here. It's very common to go file open and to open up an individual file. We don't want to do that. While we're making our files, it's kind of muscle memory for us, right? We always have gone to file open to get started in a Word file or whatever it is. In VS Code, 99% of the time, it is much better to open the folder that the file is in than it is to open the file itself. So we are going to go down to open folder. Now, while we're in here, we're going to navigate into our desktop, and you may notice that we are in this icon view. And I personally cannot stand the icon view because I don't know where I'm coming from or where I navigated to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this, this icon with the 4 rectangles on it, and I'm going to go down to list view, to column view. Column view is what allows me to see when I open my folders, what's inside of the folder, along with whatever folder that I'm coming from. This is totally optional. If you like the icons, you can stay in icon view. It doesn't really matter, but I'm going to stay in my list view, on my column view, which is this icon right here down to columns. From here, I'm going to select desktop, going to go to my code, and I'm single clicking here. I'm going to do new folder, and we're going to type in W1. And I'm going to hit create on that. And I'm going to then create another new folder called D1. And I'm going to realize that I'm being an idiot because this isn't week 1, this is week 2. So don't be afraid to call me out and say, Max, you're being dumb. I'm going to take 2 fingers. I'm going to right click on week 1 and hit rename and rename that to W2. My bad. Sorry. Week 2, and inside my week 2, I've got my day 1. Now my day 1 is an empty folder. That's okay. We're going to end up creating a lot of files inside our folders. Totally fine. So once I've got D1 selected, I've got 2 options. I can either double click on it, or I can single click on it and go down to the open button. That has now opened the folder in VS Code. And you might say, Max, how do I know that D1 is the folder that I have opened? Well, over here in the top left, we see our D1 showing up. Does anyone need help at that point?
Yeah, I need a backup. I don't have VS Code in my applications at all.
Okay, do you have it
I have it
downloaded?
on the computer, yeah, but
Okay,
it's under
So-
downloads too.
so in your downloads folder, you should have VS Code in here, right here in downloads. To get into Finder, you can hit Finder icon down here, click Downloads VS Code. You're going to click and drag that into the Applications folder over here on the left. And then once it's in applications, you can scroll all the way down to the bottom, down to VS Code, and double click on it to open it. That will open it down in your doc in this middle section. You can then take that icon and drag it over to the left section, to the other side of this bar, and that will keep that icon in the doc for you. So you can either launch it from the doc or from your applications folder.
It's much
Did that
easier
answer your-
to do the dragging and moving with the mouse than using the pad.
It's totally doable. My advice is do it all with one finger. It may be tempting to push with one and drag with the other, but it's more fluid if you try and do it all with one finger instead. Any other questions virtually or in person? Yeah, that's fine. If you get a pop-up that says, do you trust the author? That's okay to hit yes on. Any other questions? Okay, so we're gonna
I had to step away for a second. I mean, I had to say something else for a second. So I had a question. Once I created the folders, do you put anything in D1 folder?
No, D1 is empty. And then to open that folder in VS Code, we go File, Open Folder. 99% of the time, we'll want to open a folder, not the file itself. Then you go to Desktop My Code Week 2, Day 1, hit Open. And as long as you have D1 in the top left here, you are all set and good to go. Any other questions? Okay, so we're going to create our first web page. And traditionally, we call that file index.html. The reason why we call it index is it's kind of like the home page, right? It's telling the computer, hey, when you go to my website, instead of having to go to google.com/index.html, whatever that index.html file is will show up at what we call the root of the domain. It's basically saying, hey, this is a special file name for my homepage. So we're going to call it index.html. File extensions are very, very, very important. So we don't want to have an extra space in there. We don't want to just call it index. We want to call it index, the period HTML with no spaces. And we're going to go ahead and hit enter on that. Now we've created our first file. From here, we are going to create our very first basic web page. There are 3 structural tags that we use in HTML. The first one is HTML. So we use the arrow, shift and comma key to get the arrow in there. We type the letters HTML, and when we hit shift and the period key to close that arrow, VS Code is going to autocomplete what we call the closing tag down here. That may drive you crazy. Fight it, learn it, don't fight it. Having those automatic closing tags be inserted for you is, I know it may seem annoying at first, it will help you write better HTML because those closing tags are inserted for you. So something I'm going to call out here, when I hit that closing arrow, you see that not only it put that closing tag in for me, look at where it put my cursor. It put my cursor at the end of the opening tag. So what I'm going to do is when I have that in there, I'm going to hit enter. Now we are inside that HTML tag. What do we mean by we're inside of it? Well, we're opening it here and we're closing it here. So that means any code between here and here is going to be inside our HTML tag. From there, we're going to practice creating 2 more tags. One is going to be the head. And I'm going to put my cursor after line 4. You guys will learn to love line numbers as well. So I'm on line 4 over here. I'm going to put my cursor after the head tag, and I'm going to hit enter. Now notice where my cursor is. It's not over here on the left side. It's lining up with my head. Why is that? That's because whenever we are inside a tag, we should be 1 level deeper in our indentation. So I will come around with my ruler and beat your fingers on the keyboard if your indentation is not correct. Just kidding, I won't do that week 2, but maybe week 3, you better watch out. We're fully virtual, but still watch out. Indentation, while it may not matter to you yet, and it may not matter to the computer, it's going to make your code 99 times easier to debug. So watch your indentation as you go. VS Code is going to try and help you get it right. But when you are debugging, when you're sharing your screen with me and I'm trying to figure out what's wrong, we're not going to find out what's wrong. We're going to go fix your indentation. And 9 times out of 10, when we fix your indentation, we find that closing tag. We find what's wrong. So as you're going here, indentation, very, very important to you, not very important to the computer. Makes your code more readable. I am not kidding you. Today, I submitted a request to fix the entire Careers in Code website to make sure all of it was indented correctly. Indentation, super important to not only you to be able to read your code, but for other developers as well. So we got our 3 tags that are part of our main HTML page structure. We've got the HTML, we've got the head tag, and we've got our body tag. Now, our head tag is all what we call metadata. It's all information for the web browser that's going to show our page. So the head normally doesn't have any information in it that's going to show up on the page itself. It's more information so the browser knows how to handle and to show our page. The body, however, is where all of our page content is going to show up. So I'm going to type in a classic hello world. It is programming tradition that whenever we create a new page or the first thing that we output is hello world. Now from here, we are going to right click on index.html and we are going to drop down to reveal in Finder. You will notice that pops open a new Finder window for you in our My Code, in our week 2, in our day 1 with our index.html file. We're going to pause in 1 second. Last step here, double click on that file, and you should see in your web browser, hello world. Okay. Go through that again. In our VS Code, do we have our code or did we get lost before that step?
I'm lost where we have the D1 right there.
Okay. In D1, if we hover over D1, you can see this icon to the right of it, the page with the plus. Go ahead and click on that. And that will bring open a new text box where you can type in index.html. That's what's naming the file.
So I don't have the D1 dropdown at all. Mine just shows desktop and that's it.
Okay, so you're going to go to File up at the top and down to Open Folder. In here, you're going to go to your My Code, your week 2, your day 1, and then hit Open on that. Once we hit open on that, we should see our day 1 here and can go to the new file.
Max?
Yep.
This is Rain. For hello world, being that we have a header and we have the body, we don't need to begin it with a header like H1 or a paragraph, a P element.
You don't need to. You can, and we're going to get to those elements in 1 second, but it's not a requirement. And you can see that it's showing up in our browser fine. So we'll get to the other element types in a second, but it's not a requirement.
Okay, excuse me.
So if I'm missing that bar
What bar?
above where it says file, edit, selection, view, go, run, I don't have that bar.
If you put your mouse at the very top of the screen, does it show up?
No. There's no bar for that.
Okay. Do you happen to be in full screen mode in VS Code?
Oh, there it goes. Now I see it. Okay. And then we're just adding new file, you said?
File, open folder.
Open folder, okay.
And if you don't have these folders created, you can go ahead and create them. And if you do, we want to go to D1 and then hit open on that folder. Give me 1 second. I'm going to help someone in person, and I'll be right back.
Where is my...
Okay, so we're going to go file, open folder.
I just don't know why I tried that 6 times right before you walked up. No.
Learn to love it. So that open folder window got hidden behind something somewhere. And that's what's causing the issue. So what we're going to do is we're going to Command Option Escape. We're going to quit out of your VS Code entirely. Then we're going to go reopen it. And we're going to go File, Open Folder. And now we can go Desktop C5, new folder for your week 2 and your day 1, and open, and don't save that. Okay, now we can do new file, do your index.html. Get you caught up here. And right click, open in Finder, and double click. And what do you want to bet? I forgot to save that. There you go.
Thank you.
Yep.
So mine doesn't say anything. No, don't worry. No.
Yes.
Okay. Mine looks just like yours, except it's missing a thing that says body, and when I did, it does not say the thing.
Okay, I'm going to show you what you did so everyone can see it. If you are in your web browser and it looks like this, and you're like, that's a blank page, and you come back over to your VS Code and you've got the words hello world in here, and you're like, why is that not showing up? Notice this white circular blob up at the top right? That will be the bane of your existence for the first several weeks of you coding. That means that you did not save your file. So whatever is showing in with VS Code is not showing in the browser yet because you haven't saved it, so the browser knows what to show. So I'm promising you, I'm telling you this, I'm making a big deal of it now because a lot of you guys will run into that. You'll be frustrated. You won't know why it's not working just because you didn't save your file. So Command S will become your new best friend coming up. You're going to hit Command S and you notice that little blob will go away and instead you have a close icon. Well, when you go back over to your browser, you're going to say, well, Max, it's still freaking blank. You're an idiot. In your browser, don't forget to hit Command R or click the little refresh button, and that should bring up your text. Now note, I have mine way blown up. Yours will be smaller. I have it just blown up so you guys can see it during class. So if you are in VS Code and you've made changes to your file, you'll have this white blob up at the top. Don't forget to hit Command S to save it, switch back over to Chrome or whatever browser you're using, and hit Command R or click the little refresh, and that will bring you back. Come on. There we go. Sorry. To get to your code running in the browser, the first time to open it, right click on the file name, go down to Reveal in Finder. Then from there, double click on index.html, and that should pop it open for you in your browser. All right, how are we feeling? If you guys are lost virtually, raise your hand in Zoom or come off mute and scream bloody murder. That works too. All right, how are we feeling? We wrote our first website, believe it or not. All right, so we're gonna play around with a couple elements here. Not stressing this just to make a point, because this may or may not be a question on your quiz this week, but our 3 structural HTML elements or tags: HTML, head, and body. So we can play around with the head a little bit by using a title tag. And the title tag is what controls what shows up in the window, or now more commonly, the tab name. So we can call this my first homepage. And if I go back over to Chrome and refresh, my first homepage shows up. If it didn't, go back to VS Code, make sure you hit Command S before you went over to your browser. Make sure that that's saved in there. Have to remember to save before you leave it, yes. As we advance, I'm going to show you some tools, some settings in VS Code that you may love it and you may hate it. But for day 1 of VS Code, we're going to remember to save before we leave the page. There are a couple settings we can make it to autosave, but we're going to work our way up to that because it's important to remember to save. Okay. Couple other tags we can play with. There's also something called the style tag. The style tag is going to bring us into our first CSS. So in our style tag, we basically told the browser, hold up, this isn't HTML anymore. Whatever is inside that style tag is going to be some CSS. We're going to be diving into CSS more during the second half of class or tomorrow, depending on what you guys vote on. But for our style tag, we run into a problem here. We don't really have anything to style yet. We don't really have anything that we can select. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, any H1. So we type in H1 and we use the curly braces. That is Shift and the letter next to P on your keyboard. Make sure you get curly braces and not square braces or brackets. We want the curly ones. From there, we can target certain properties and have those properties, those CSS properties, have certain values in them. The easiest one to see is color. So we say color, and we are going to say, hey, make the color red. So we go back over to our browser and we refresh and it's not red. Well, excuse me, Mr. CSS, I told you H1 color red. Well, what the browser is doing is it is looking in our body for any place that we have an H1. Well, we don't have an H1 yet, so it has nothing to turn red. So we come down here, we put in that H1, and inside the H1, we're going to put our words, hello world. I come back over to the browser, I refresh, and we get our red hello world. I'm going to pause there. If you've got a red hello world, good job. If you don't have a red hello world, look at your code, see if you can figure out what's off. And if you can't, go ahead and raise your hand or in person or virtually, and I'll come help you. Remember, what we're doing here is this style tag right here is what's telling the browser, heads up, whatever is coming this way is going to be CSS until you see this closing style tag, which lines up with this style tag up here. Now we use what we call a selector. That H1 selector is lining up with this H1 element right down here. It is then taking a CSS property, in this case called color, and the CSS value, red here, and making it apply to whatever the content is inside our H1. Get used to very ugly drawings on the screen. You will learn to hate them, but we will be doing that very many times throughout the course. Rain, I thought I saw a hand raised. Did you figure it out?
You know, it's funny because I literally was about to say the H1 would be the selector, the property, the color, and red the value, which you went ahead and explained beautifully. But being that I raised my hand, I still will ask a question. So the selector will always be the HTML element within when you're trying to add CSS style or something like that, or
not necessarily.
Okay.
Oftentimes we'll see that it is a class or an ID, but we'll be getting to that a little bit later. It will always be related to the element that we're trying to style, right? It's called a selector because what the CSS is doing is selecting all of the H1s it can find and applying the styling inside of that selector.
I believe this was in the homework. You had like a pre-reading on CSS, like cheat sheet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And those resources are really, you may look at the first 3 resources on that list and say, these all confuse the hell out of me. And you get to the last one and you're like, well, why didn't he put that one first? Everyone has different resources that works, right? So, and if none of those resources work for you, but you're staying up in class, you feel like you're getting everything, that's also totally fine. Okay, so we're going to play around with a couple other selectors here, or HTML elements, I mean. So we can create something all the way down to an H6. H7 is not an actual element, but H1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are. Why did they go through 6? Because they figured out that anything all the way down to the 6th element is going to kind of get down smaller in size, and anything lower than that, why do you have 6 levels of headings in the first place? So H1 through 6 works, and whatever you type in there, I'm going to type in heading 6, hit save, come back over to my browser, refresh, and now I have my heading 6 show up. Okay, now we get to keep going, playing around with our different elements. Another very common one is going to be a P tag. The P stands for paragraph. It's a paragraph tag. And we're going to say paragraph text goes here. Eva, go ahead.
Sorry, how do you get it to display the page, your website, the one that you're building?
Right click, reveal in Finder.
Oh, okay.
Then double click on index.html, and that will pop you open in the browser.
Great, thank you.
Don't forget to save before you switch back over to the browser, and you should see that show up.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No problem. How are we doing? Does anyone have any questions? Do we have our 3 elements showing up?
How do we save it? Oh, file plus or command plus.
File save or Command and S. Everything that you have muscle memory on for control, you want to reprogram that thumb to move over to the Command button instead of the Control button. Now, we may have some text that we want to style, but we don't want to put in another paragraph. For that, we use what is called an inline element, and the most common inline element is a span tag. So inside our P tag, we're going to go another level deep. We're going to put this span tag around the word text. So this span tag is not only nested inside the P tag, it is also nested inside the body tag, which is nested inside the HTML tag. So how do we know it's inside of it? Well, the closing HTML tag isn't here. So anything before that is going to be styled, is going to be included in that HTML tag. So we go from head to body, body to P, P to span. Now we can go back up to our CSS section, and we can target that span tag. And inside that span tag, let's pick something like font-weight and make it bold. We save, we head back over to the browser, we refresh, and our text got a little bit bolder. Now experiment a little bit. I'm not going to do this, but change that span tag to another P tag. See what happens. Then change
Hey,
it
Max.
back.
Hey, Max, how do we get that page open again? Like the new browser, what do we push? Command what?
Right click, reveal in Finder,
Okay,
then double click on index.html.
thank you.
You can highlight it, click and drag the highlighted text into it. If you don't have something working, if you can't see your output, if it's not doing what you thought it should, raise your hand. We're going intentionally slow this class to make sure that we pick up speed together. Yeah. Okay, so you're saying, hey, go find all the H1s on this page and set the color of that to red. Where are all the H1s on the page?
Oh, no.
There aren't any, which is why nothing's turning red.
Okay.
So if you look at my code, you see how I have hello world, but look at what's on the left and right side of it.
Oh.
That's that H1 tag.
That's why it wasn't.
So
That's why it wasn't.
if we do the H1 here and highlight our text and move it inside of it, then hit save and go back over. Where is it? No, that's can pop it open. There's your red hello world.
Thank you.
No problem.
Why is it no? Like this instead of the other.
Yes. Yes, definitely. You need help or you good? Okay.
Hey, Max. Okay, don't be upset. I walked away from my computer about 20 minutes ago for a few seconds, well, a few minutes, and I kind of missed how you opened the folder in VS Code itself, and I'm trying to figure it out myself. You started to talk
There we
about
go.
and then
Okay,
something else.
we're gonna file, open up top, down to open folder.
Yep.
Then you are gonna go to your My Code on your desktop. And if you don't have the W2 folder, you can hit the new folder icon down in the bottom left, or the new folder button.
Uh-huh.
You're gonna open week 2, day 1, and hit open on that.
Uh-huh.
Then to create the file, you're gonna hover over the D1 in the left sidebar and click on the new icon, the new file icon. And from there, you're gonna call that index.html. Anyone else need help?
You said you want us to play around with it, try to get the other text read, correct?
You can put this into a P tag and see what it does. There are a bunch of different tags that we can play with. So we so far have seen all of these opening and closing tags. There is also something called a self-closing tag. In other words, it doesn't have an opening and a closing. It closes in the opening. What a good example of that is your BR tag. BR stands for break. That is going to show a line break or an enter between the two lines of, or wherever that BR shows up. Now you notice this isn't BR with an opening and then another tag with the /BR. We close that tag directly. So that is called a self-closing tag. So if we save that and head back over to the browser, we can see paragraph text goes. And even if I expand my window here, here is down on the next line. That is because we put the BR right here, which is pushing that break, that line break onto the next line. We also have things like lists, and we have a bunch of different kinds of lists. We have unordered lists, ULs. Those are going to show up like bullet points. Now, ULs are kind of interesting because they have certain children element that make or style that unordered list properly. What that is a list item, an LI, and we say first item, and then we say I heart bullets, bullet points. Let me be more specific on that one. We save and we head back over to our browser and refresh, we get bullet points. So we're going to pause there because you may be switching back and forth between the Zoom window to see my code or squinting at what's on the projector. And all you may want to do is scroll up and see what I've got in my style tag. And it's annoying the hell out of you that you can't get there. Well, what we're going to do is install an extension called Live Share. And you guys are going to get in the hang at the beginning of every class, not only opening the folder for the day, but also opening my Live Share link so that you can see my code as I'm typing it Google Doc style. So in order to do that, what we're going to do, give me 1 second to get set up here. We are going to go to in our VS Code, we're going to go over to, oh, hold on, it did not work the way I wanted it to. We're going to go over to the square with the block coming out of it. That is the extensions pane. That should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 icons down. Go ahead and click on that. Then up at the very top, it says search extensions. You are going to type in live space share and hit enter. And the first one that comes up should be live share from Microsoft with 12.1 million downloads. Go ahead and click on that install button. It's installing an extension inside VS Code, yes. Once you have that installed, you should have this live share icon now right underneath the extensions. Go ahead and click on that. And then what you are going to do is click on the join button. Now, in that join button, you'll see this URL pop up at the top. What you are going to do is not actually do that. The reason why is because if you paste that in there, it is going to overwrite whatever you have open with whatever code I'm sharing with you. You don't want that. You want my code in another window so that you can keep on working on your code. So to prevent that from happening, what you're going to do is say File and go down to New Window. Now you should have two windows open. One window with your code. Oops. Ignore me. I should have that open. Sorry. One window with your code open and another window hanging out over here that says welcome. In that new window, the window without your code, click on the live share icon. And from there, go ahead and hit the join button. Then you are
Mine
going
says
to head in.
continuous anonymous at the bottom or sign in.
Yeah, mine.
Go ahead and hit continue as anonymous on that one. You do not need to sign in. Down in the bottom right, instead of having the URL up here, you may have a button right in the middle that says continue as anonymous. Go ahead and hit that button. Then you're going to head over to the Zoom chat, which should look like this. Right click and hit copy link. Zoom chat, right click, copy link.
Can you go back to once we pick how to do the two screens so that we're not sharing?
Yep. So in the version that has your code open, you're going to go to File up at the top and down to New Window. Now you have two windows open. In the window that doesn't have your code, you're going to go over to the live share icon, then click the join button, then go back into Zoom, into the chat, right click on this link and hit copy link, then head back over to your VS Code, paste the link and hit enter, and that should bring up my copy of the code. So in live share, hit the join button. Oop, come on. Join right here. If you don't have this URL pop up in the top right or in the top center, go down to the bottom right. There should be a window that shows up here that says join anonymously. And then you've got this URL up here. You can paste that URL in from the chat. Corwin, what's up? Coming to you next.
It does not want to let me open a new window on top of the one that I have.
Are you in full screen mode for your current window?
I digress.
No, the link will be different every class.
No, it still don't work. Even so,
Okay. Oh, this camera's gonna be the death of me. Come on, by me. Okay. Go ahead and share your screen and let's take a look.
all right.
Okay, that is certainly weird. Let me request remote control.
All right. Yeah.
I'm gonna, this is your code. So what I'm gonna do is go File and New Window.
I can't see.
Go here and hit join. And then down here, we're gonna say continue as anonymous. And hit, it says enter your name. Say enter for guest user, and then enter for the URL. And you're joined in and good to go. Sorry, I realized that was your screen. That fixed it for you? Cool. Okay, Corey, go ahead and share your screen. Let's take a look at what's going on for you.
I gotta. I thought I had allowed it earlier, but I gotta reset my.
Okay, cool. While
just
you're in there,
joined.
go to accessibility. In system
All right.
preferences, go down to accessibility.
Oh yeah.
And
I got
okay,
it
you already
already
did it.
on there.
Cool. So let me
Yeah.
request that. Cool. Okay, so your VS Code window has decided that as an extra
It no longer
system,
wants to
does not
exist.
want to do anything. So, okay.
So I tried to
Here's
pop
the
it open
problem.
in my browser.
Yep, and that's definitely what we don't want to do. So instead, if we go to your Zoom, see if it will let me do that. Is your Zoom open on another window?
Oh yeah.
So
Oh no, it kind of just crashed out of nowhere, honestly.
up
think I
at the
have-
very top of your screen, do you have a toolbar for your screen sharing options, like the stop share button? Right above stop
Yeah.
share should be your chat.
What about it?
So open the chat, and then on the link,
Mhm.
instead of clicking on the link, right click on the link and hit copy link.
Okay, I see.
Now in your VS Code, and this is good for everyone to follow along with, we're going to go File, New Window.
And it kept doing that.
Okay, so let's try this. I'm going to close out of your existing one. And I want to make sure that we've got Zoom or VS Code in your applications. We do. So what I'm going to do is quit out of it. So Command Q to quit. That's going to give it a complete reset. We can open your day one code, and that's your code. Now, when we go File, New Window, it doesn't want to throw a fit on you anymore. So if your application ever gets funky, remember Command Q to quit it.
Just hard reset it.
Yep, pretty much. Now, when we join, we can continue as anonymous. We can just hit enter for your username. We're going to paste in that join link. And now you've got a copy of my code.
Great, appreciate it.
All right, how are we feeling? Did we all make it into my code?
mine doesn't want to seem to work correctly.
Share screen, let's take a look.
Hold on, give me. I got you streaming from my iPad. Give me 1 second.
No, I'll be right back to you. I'm gonna help someone in person while you get up. Okay, who needed help remotely?
Oh, that was me, Max.
Yep.
Alright, so. I'm sharing my screen now.
Okay, what's going on?
So I'm reopening it. Give me a second here.
Mhm.
This one. I had to reopen the Zoom chat on my Mac instead of my iPad. Could you resend that link so I can repost it in there?
Yep. And remember, when you're copying the link, don't highlight the text and hit copy. What you want to do instead is just right click on the link and hit copy link. If you highlight the text, sometimes there are characters that get in there that shouldn't be in there. So just right click on the link and hit copy link instead of highlighting it first.
That makes sense.
And what do you want to bet that I broke the link because I did not follow my advice and right click it? Yep, I definitely broke it. All right, I'm going to send that one more time. Sorry, my bad. Join. Oh, no, that looks right. Let me copy it from here instead. Give me 1 second. Go here. Okay, I just sent that one more time. Oh, yep, go ahead and type, no, whoa. That is the name, that should be your name, not the link. Hold on, no. The screen before this one was supposed to be your name. So hit cancel in the bottom right. Go join it again. Hit join. Hit continue as anonymous. Now type your name in there. Okay, enter. Now paste the link and hit enter. Enter. And now you're in. So it's hit the join button, click continue as anonymous, enter your name, hit enter, paste the URL, hit enter, and that will finally get you in. That is tricky. Do not worry, we're going to be doing this, and it's going to be painful at the beginning of every class. And every class it's going to get faster and faster. And then we're going to get to the point where you'll shut up, Max, we're already all joined the session. Let's get to coding. So it does get better with a little bit of practice, but what that allows you to do is to see my code as I'm writing it. So if you get lost or if you need to reference it at some point, you can. We are going to take a break, be back at 7:30, and then we're going to decide what we do with the second half of class. Leave all your windows open just so you can join them if you come back. I will see you back here at 7:30. Take a break for now.
Can I just ask a question before we go on break?
Yeah,
So-
sure, go for it.
During the live, do we have to do the new code or?
No, you're fine. We're just kind of playing around. So there's nothing today that you'll have to like turn in or catch up on. I will let you know once we start working on a project of what you'll definitely want to be coding along with. But for now, it's fine. You don't need any of this code for today.
Thank you.
It's going to go one way. But given everyone the opportunity to vote there, either spend more time in Figma working in a group, or we can keep rolling forward on code. Most of the votes in, give people one more minute to vote, and then we will share the results and go from there. Just click on that icon again and it will move the sidebar back over and hide it. If it doesn't, click on files and then click on files again. All right, so with a pretty overwhelming majority, we are going to keep on working on code. So let's keep doing that. I am going to go back to my screen share. Okay, so we've been working on a bunch of stuff here, but every time that I save my file, so if I change I heart to I hate bullet points, I have to come back over here and hit the refresh button, right? And that's kind of annoying. Wouldn't it be nice if whenever we saved our file over here, it would just automatically refresh for us in the browser? So that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this tab. And instead, in my VS Code, by the way, if this sidebar is in your way and you want to hide it, just click on the active icon again, and that will get that bar out of the way. And then if you click on that icon again, it brings the bar back. So if you want to hide that bar, you can just click, or I think if you get your mouse in the right spot here, you can click it and drag it all the way over to the left. That also gets rid of it. And then to bring it back again, you just click on that icon and it pops back open. Okay, so down in the bottom right, do you guys have a go live button? No. Okay. So what you're going to do instead is go back to the extensions over here on the left. That is the square with a triangle popping out of it. The triangle, my God, Max. the squares with another square popping out of it. Up at the top in search, you're going to do a search for live server. And the first one comes up is not actually the one that you want. You want the one down at the kind of in the middle from Microsoft. Oh, hold on. Don't install any of that. What do I have installed? Sorry. Live server.
It's the first one.
It is the first one. Okay. How many downloads does Ritwick Day have?
I see 33.4 million.
900.
That's definitely the right one.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry, 33.
So you want the first one by Ritwick Day? Probably not pronouncing that right. Has 33.3 million downloads. Go ahead and hit the install button on that one. Once that is installed, do you now have a go live button in the bottom right? Okay, go ahead and click on that button and you'll notice that that will open back up in Chrome. But now it's, look at this URL. It's 127.0.0.1. That URL is a particular IP address, IP standing for Internet Protocol. Basically, what's happening there is your computer is running a particular server on port number 5601. When Ryan comes in to teach you about APIs, he's going to teach you all about networking and all kinds of stuff about IP addresses and ports and all of that stuff. All you need to know is 127.0.0.1 is the IP address of your local computer, also called the localhost IP address. So you'll see not only is our code running over here, and we can see it just like we could before, but if we go back over to our code and change hate to love or love to hate, depending on how you're feeling about your code, and save, you'll notice in your browser, without even having to switch to it, it will live update for you. So as you're writing your code and as you save it, it will automatically update over in the browser. Again, the way we did that was we clicked on the Go Live button, which is usually in the bottom right corner down here. Now you'll notice my Go Live button has now disappeared. Instead, all you see is this do not enter sign port 5601. Sometimes you'll be over here and you'll lose this window. Let's say you accidentally close it and you're like, ooh, how do I get that back? What you can do is down in the bottom right, you can stop the server by clicking on that port 5601 and then click on Go Live again, and it will pop it back open for you in whatever your default browser is. Now, you don't need to do this every time. You only need to stop it and restart it if you lose this window over here. You can also theoretically go to this URL again and it will pop back up. But the shortcut is to stop the server down in the bottom right, click on it again, that will pop it back open. You only need to do that if you close out of this window accidentally or can't find it. Okay, that means you did not open the folder right at the beginning of class. So what you need to do is in your VS Code, you're going to go to File and Open Folder. And again, we never want to open files. We always want to open the folder the file is in. So we go File and down to Open Folder. Now go to your desktop, to your My Code, to your week 2, to your day 1, and then hit Open on that. Open on the folder? On the folder day 1. So you can't use File Open, you have to use File Open Folder. Okay. Anyone else have any issues trying to get their Go Live to work?
I didn't hear what she said, but I don't have the, stop sign with the port thing below.
Do you have a Go Live button?
No.
Okay. So you have to install the extension. You go to extensions over here and type in live server. And the first one by Ritwick Day, go ahead and hit the install button on that.
I did that. Yeah, I already did that part. It says installed.
Okay.
I do know
Try
you can-
expanding your window,
Okay,
drag out the window. Does that bring it up?
no,
Okay. One other thing we can try, right click in that bottom right corner. And that should bring up this whole drop down. And then do you have an option for a live server extension?
no. I just have live share extension, but not live server extension.
When you installed it, did you install the one from Ritwick Day?
From what? Sorry.
In your extensions downloads, the
Yeah.
one that had the gear by it, does it say that it's the one from Ritwick Day?
The live share?
The live server.
Um,
It's not live share, it's live server. This is a different extension. This is the second extension.
I don't have that one.
Okay.
Okay, so Retwick Day, I see that one.
So make sure you're searching for live server, not for live share.
Okay,
And then get the one from Ritwick Day and hit the install button on that one.
okay, I did that one now.
Okay, now do you have a go live button in the bottom right?
Yes,
Beautiful. Go ahead and click on that, and that should get you up and running.
got it, thank you.
No problem. Okay, anyone else need help? Okay, so we're going to keep going a little bit more. We've done the most common HTML elements. One that we have not covered and is super important to understand is your A tag or your anchor tag. So what we're going to do is inside, let's make maybe a new P tag. And inside that P tag, I am going to say, I really like Google search. And what I would like to do is make the word Google turn into a link. In order to do that, we're going to create an A tag. The A is short for anchor, and we're going to move the word Google inside between the opening tag and the closing tag. Now, so far, we've just had opening tags, closing tags, and self-closing tags, but we haven't used any additional attributes. An attribute is an additional detail, the name of the attribute and the value of the attribute that we put inside the opening tag. In order to do that, I'm going to put my cursor after the letter A in the opening tag, but before the closing arrow of the opening tag. I'm going to put a space and I'm going to say href. Stands for hyperlink reference. And then I'm going to say equal, and I'm going to put in my double quotes. From there, between the two quotes, I'm going to put in https://google.com. And if I'm using my live server properly, when I save with the command S and head back over to my browser, I now have my Google link. And if I click on that link, it should take me right to Google. And if you hit the back button, it should bring you back to your page. Excuse me. So this is where your syntax really matters. Make sure you've got every single letter right in the right place. Make sure you understand how is Google, how does it know that only the word Google is supposed to be linked? Because it's in between our opening tag, which finishes right here. That's my whole opening tag. I've got the content of my tag, and then I've got my closing tag here. Now, inside that tag, we have something called an attribute. We have the equal sign, and then we have the value of the attribute right here that we put in quotes. Now, there are lots of attributes that we can use. One of the attributes we can use is called style. So on my P tag, I'm going to put in the word style with my opening quote and my closing quotes. And because style tag is a unique, the style attribute is a unique one, what the browser knows to do is take whatever is in those quotes and apply it as CSS to that specific P element. So what we can do is we can say something like text dash decoration and say underline. And if I save that and go back over to my code, you will see now that whole P tag is underlined. Now you may notice that I put this down onto the next line. You don't have to do that. What basically I'm looking at is when this line gets really, really long and gets to the edge of my screen, I want to wrap that down onto the next line. So what I end up doing is putting my P tag on one line, my closing tag on another, and then the content of that P tag I put in here. Now, if this line gets really long and towards the end of the screen, I might hit enter again and move that down onto its own line. That's kind of personal preference. But when your lines of code get really long, you may want to consider wrapping that down. And this is the logical place where you would wrap it. Now, this is indented another level because it's inside my P tag. So you'll see whenever we open a new tag, we always indent one level further down. Now, you may be saying, hey, this is all great and my code is working, but I'm a visual person. So you're telling me all this stuff, but I'm not really seeing it. Well, if you switch over to our outlines, you'll see I've got some visuals in there that might make it a little bit easier to understand. Hey, here's our HTML. Our HTML, because the closing tag is all the way down here, it doesn't actually, or this green rectangle encompasses both the head and the body. Now, inside the head, we have our title tag. And then inside the body is where we're putting all of our content. The same goes for our HTML element or our HTML tag. That breaks it down a little bit and shows you, hey, this is the name of the attribute. This is the value of the attribute, and it's separated by an equal and the quotes. The content is what comes between the start tag or the opening tag and the end tag or the closing tag. All of that together makes up the entire HTML element. Goggin, question.
We also could use the extension prettier, I think, to make it look better.
We are not going to cover prettier in week 1 or 2. But we will come back to prettier and autosave as an option. So if you want to play around with those before we cover them in class, you can use the extension prettier and autosave. But we're going to make you guys make sure you understand the indentation and why we're indenting at those levels. And then later on, I'll show you kind of some tools to make it a little easier to do it. All right, feeling good? We all got our links working. Anyone need help with getting that Google link working?
It's Tara.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
My Google link was working when we did it the first time, but then when I added in the style, it looks like mine looks like yours, but it's disappeared off my webpage now. So
Okay, so check to see, do you have the opening quote and the closing quote on your style?
yes.
Do you have the closing tag for the P, the closing arrow for the opening P tag and the closing P tag correct?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and share your screen. Let's take a look at your code.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to request remote control. And let's see, you've got everything right there. Got your google.com. You do have your closing P. So let's see. Can you drag your browser window over to this monitor? Okay, so notice what's happening up here. This is your index.html file. So this won't live update. If we hit the refresh button, it will come in. However, we don't really want to hit the refresh button, right? We want it to live update. Well, this, if it's looking at index.html, it won't do that for you. So I'm going to close this one so we don't get confused. Then I'm going to go back down here, stop the live server, give it a second, and go back live with it. That's going to bring us back to our 127 version of it, which will live update. So if we change love to hate and hit save, you'll see it auto updates over there. So we want to be careful. Make sure that that live updating version is the one that you're on, not the index.html that we opened before.
Okay, when we did it the first time, it was when I hit the command S and I saved it, it was live. So do you know, like, how did I get it back to, I guess, the first one?
You either had it open from before, or if you right click reveal in Finder and double click on it, this will open it in the non-live, the non-refreshing way. Okay. So in order to get the auto refresh working, you have to open it from this one down here. But if you open it this way, I recommend like closing it out so you don't accidentally mix up the two of them.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? You have a question? Oh yeah, an IP would work. Yeah. Yep. You can even link to other pages on your site using an A tag, href. So you don't necessarily have to link to another website. You could link to an IP address if you wanted to, or when we start working with multiple pages, you'll see how we can use those A tags to link between pages that we're creating as well. Any other questions? All right, we're going to practice with.
Yeah, I had a question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I remember you saying one of the reasons why you indent the lines in case the line of code gets too long for organization purposes. I don't know if you mentioned any other reason for why you indent the line.
Yep, the other reason you indent is whenever you open a new tag and the content in that tag isn't all going to fit on that line, you indent. So in here, this H6, you notice doesn't have an indentation for heading because that heading fits all on one line. So if it's on one line, you don't have to indent. But down here, for example, the content of this P tag doesn't all fit on one line. So what I do is I make sure the opening tag and the closing tag are on the same level of indentation. And then whatever is inside of that tag, I indent another level.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep, you can see the body tag, it opens up here, and we can easily, very visually see all of this is part of the body. Well, how can you tell that? Even if you don't know how opening and closing tags work, your eye just visually looks at this and goes, starting here all the way down to here, all of that code is related. Well, even if you didn't know about the closing tags, why is your eye picking up on that? It's because that's indented properly. Now, instead, imagine if your code looked like this. Okay, that looks horrible. And it's very easy if we're not looking as we're typing when we're creating those tags to get that into the wrong spot. Now, do you have any idea if that P tag is inside the body or outside the body? What about that LI? Where is that LI grouped with the UL? Is that at a different level than the UL? I know this is this looks like an extreme example, but as you guys are writing your code, it's very easy for your indentation to get out of alignment. So what you want to make sure is that you're following those rules. And if you're looking at it and you go, something's a little off there, where's my closing P tag? Don't hesitate to hit Shift Tab or get the cursor in the right spot and hit the Tab button. And that's going to move it back into place so it looks like this. Yep. The BR is the line break. That means that it's going to push the word here down onto the next line. And this is the only example that we've used so far of a self-closing tag. We don't have a closing BR tag there. In fact, we never use a closing tag with BR. We just put that slash in there. In other words, we don't have any content that goes inside or in between that tag. It just opens and closes itself. Let's do another example of a self-closing tag. So we're going to put in our first image. In order to do that, we want to be really careful because as developers, we can't just take any image off the internet and use it. That's a violation of copyright law. So instead, because our classes are recorded on YouTube, we're going to do the right thing. And we are going to go to a site called unsplash.com, unsplash.com. And this is a great place to get royalty-free or copyright-free images. So you can do a search for whatever you would like up in the top. It doesn't matter what image you're picking. We'll pick puppies because who doesn't love a good puppy? And that's going to bring up a bunch of search results. I will take this one and click into it. And then what I'm going to do is right click on it and go down to copy image address. If you are in Safari, it might be a little different, but we are essentially trying to get the URL of that image. We'll get into how we download images and get them to show up in our page and all of that down the line. But for now, we're just going to borrow Unsplash's hosting, Unsplash's URL. So I'm going to hit copy image address, not copy image address. I'm going to go back over to my page. I'm going to hit enter after my P tag, and I want to make sure that that lines up, right? I'm still inside my body element, and I'm going to do a new tag, img for image. I'm going to type in src for the source, and then I'm going to paste in my URL between the quotes. Now that is a very long URL, but we're not done with this tag. So we need to scroll over to the very end of this line after the quote and put our slash and our closing arrow. That is closing out our image tag. Now, if that is hard for you to see, you can wrap that onto multiple lines like I just did. So you want to make sure you've got your opening arrow, img, your src equals your opening quote, paste in your long Unsplash URL, have your closing quote at the end of the URL, and then you want to have your slash and your closing arrow because we're closing out that tag. So we're going to hit save on that. We're going to head back over to your live server URL, and I get one puppy. And I'm like, well, I wanted all my other puppies. Where are they? If I scroll over, well, they're there. I've got a huge freaking image of puppies. I'd like to shrink that down a little bit. In order to do that, I'm going to go back over to my style all the way up at the top. And I'm going to say, hey, go find an image, an IMG. Go find all the IMG elements on the page. There's only one of them. And I'm going to set the width of that to 300 px. Px stands for pixels. Be learning more about image, different sizing and different options down the road. But for now, we're just going to say 300 pixels. I'm going to go back over to my index.html. And there are all my cute puppies in a row, all fitting on a screen. Got your image showing. If it's shrunken down, you're good to go. If not, raise your hand. We want to make sure we're understanding step by step here. We'll give you guys a minute to catch up. Again, it's the image tag, SRC, my opening quote, I paste in my URL. I make sure to have my closing quote at the end. I then put my slash and my arrow in to close out my self-closing tag, the IMG tag. Then I scroll up to the top, and in my style section, I write some CSS, IMG, and I put my width in of 300 px.
If you just type in the number, it'll still go through, right?
Without the px, you mean?
Yeah.
It will, but that is considered invalid CSS. You should always assign a unit. You shouldn't leave that unit off. It will default to px. It will still work, but it's considered dirty CSS if you don't include a unit with your measurement.
Makes sense.
It's funny, that will not be the case when you get to React, but for CSS, regular CSS, you should include a unit, yes. Did we all get our pretty images in?
Can you scroll back down towards?
And remember, you've got the live share as well. So if you still have that open, you can use that live share and then you can scroll wherever you want. Let me try and get it both on the screen at the same time. There you go. You remote people are so lucky. It is like 95 degrees in this room and I am melting.
Yeah, I can't see where it is.
The only difference is like I took put the closing tag like back a tab, but everything else is fine.
Oh, okay, yeah, it does kind of look like that's not
It is. You don't have your sizing in, but what I'm guessing is, oh, your image is showing up.
Oh, it didn't show before, so.
Make sure you remember to save. If you didn't hit Command S, it won't show up in the browser.
It didn't have the white dot a second ago, so it did that.
Oh, yeah, could be. So now you can just put in the CSS right here to look like the image and that will size it down.
I mean, the whole image.
This image up at the top, you see how I added in that styling? That's going to shrink it down so that it's only a couple hundred pixels wide. Yep.
So I have to scroll over for the full photo.
Yep. So go back to your code and see how I added in this image up here up at the top.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to style it to shrink it down. Everyone good remotely? Oh, no. Awesome. Go ahead.
Quick question. So my image is not showing up on the website. I don't know if I inputted it incorrectly, but it says HTTPS images dot all the other stuff. So I don't know what's going on.
Okay, share your screen. Let's take a look. So
okay,
you've got sourcey. What we want is just the SRC for the source. There's no E in the source tag or the source attribute. So go ahead and take that E out.
Am I supposed to stop sharing? It's not letting me take it out.
It should. Try clicking down there again and hit the delete key.
Nope, it's not letting me.
That's weird. Let me try one more time.
Oh, you erased the bottom one. Okay, let me move my cursor. Yep, there we go.
There you go.
Man,
Sometimes when I draw on people's screen, it locks out, but it normally only does it one time. So sorry about that.
There we go.
Save and okay, good work.
Thank you.
No problem. I'll get our image working. Any other questions remotely or in person? Okay, so if you guys take a look at the outline, you'll see that there are a ton of different HTML elements, some of which we went over, some of which you didn't. And you might be saying, Max, you're smart and all, but you're not that smart. How would I know that all of these exist? Well, that's where documentation comes in. So if you open up a new tab and do a search for the letter W, the number 3, and schools, that's going to take you to a very popular website. And up at the top, you can go to references and down to HTML tag reference. And over here on the left, you will see a bunch of different HTML tags. Hey, this A tag is one that we use. Let's click on that. Here is all of the documentation for how we make an A tag work. And to test this code out, we can actually hit the try it yourself button, and they're going to give us a little example that looks like some of the code we've written so far. And then over on the right-hand side, it's going to show us how it's working, and we can even play with that. So I can take the word visit and type in go to, then click the run button up at the top, and you'll see over on the right-hand side, it actually changed it out for me. So again, to get to this, I went to w3schools.com. I went to references up at the top. I went down to HTML tag reference. And over here on the left-hand side, you can see there are a bunch of different tags. So if I click on something like the body, not only is it going to give me an example, it's also going to give me the definition, right? And it's going to tell me we can use headings, paragraph, images, hyperlinks, yada, yada, yada. There can only be one body in every HTML document. And surprise, surprise, it works in every major popular browser. HTML is a pretty widely adopted standard. There are some newer or cutting edge features that aren't supported in browsers, but almost all the features that we're going to be learning are supported across all the major browsers. So you can learn about button tags and our BR tags and all kinds of stuff that is available in here. Now, you may also be saying, Max, that's cool and all, but you were writing some voodoo. You were writing some stuff up in this style. How am I supposed to know what color and font weight and width, and how am I supposed to learn about all of that styling? Well, just like the HTML section, if you go to CSS up at the top, over on the left-hand side, you will see an entire breakdown of the different options that are available to you in your CSS. So if we go in here and take a look at something like CSS text and scroll down, we learn about color and how we can change the color. Or if we wanted to, we could apply a background color. So all different kinds of options in our CSS. We'll definitely be learning all the common ones as we go through class. But if you're wondering how that works, or you want more details, or you're a reference person, you can check this out. And one other resource that I'll recommend is if you head over to Canvas and take a look in the assignments under the week 2 pre-reading. Week 2 pre-reading under the optional assignments, you'll see I've got linked to a CSS cheat sheet here. And so this is a great PDF to print out. It's meant to be very visual, but it gives you a breakdown of how to work with the border. Tomorrow, we're going to dive into the box model and learn about margin and padding and borders. There's things like transitions and fonts in here, color, all different kinds of cool PDF, all different kinds of cool reference or cheat sheet. So if you're a visual person, if you like to have it printed, this is a good option for you. I've also linked to some slides. So if you're someone who learns from slides better, if you feel like, hey, I got everything that Max is doing, but I want to understand the why, I want to understand the concept. This is a good option for you to go through these slides. This was actually done by a teacher at Careers in Code who taught in the first cohort. So you can go through this if you're someone who learns through slides. And then there's also, if you're someone who learns through reading, who is more of a textbook fan or an article fan, this will go through all of HTML and give you a breakdown of the history of it, how tags work. This is kind of more the concept and the history as well. Okay, any questions on any of those resources? Okay, we'll spend another couple minutes. We're actually going to dive into HTML selectors and then as CSS selectors. And then tomorrow, we'll start diving into the box model, understanding the layout, right? How do we get columns to show up? We're going to get into the Bootstrap grid, and then we'll start learning about components and kind of puzzle piecing our first site together. So we are a little ahead of schedule, which is great, means we get more content to cover. But as always, don't be afraid to fill out that daily feedback form, right? So if you've got no feedback, I'll just take that as no news is good news. But if there's a concept that you want to revisit, don't be afraid to fill out that feedback form and give feedback, or let me know at stand up at the beginning of class and we can kind of do a review on that. Okay, so for our CSS, so far, we have used the HTML element name, right? That H1 or the image tag. Well, what happens if we end up having two things on the page? So maybe I have my hello world, I have my heading, and I add a new H1 that says this should be blue. Abadi abada. Okay, so I save on that. I go back over to my browser and I look and I've got hello world in red and this should be blue. Okay, well, I run into a problem. Because in my VS Code, I still want my hello world to be red, but I would like this should be blue to be blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an attribute to my H1. I'm going to use a special attribute called ID, and I'm going to call this blue heading. Now, this is where you guys start to love and hate casing. I put heading with a capital H. There's no space there. A space won't work. So you can use a dash, you can use an underscore, or you could make that H capitalized. That's called camel casing. We're going to learn about the different types of casing a little bit later on. So I've got my ID blue heading. And ID lines up with a # or a hashtag in your CSS. So we're going to come back up to our style tag. We're going to put our # in, and I'm going to type in blue heading. Make sure I've got my # here. I'm using a # or the hashtag because I used ID in here.
Exactly what we typed though, right?
Correct. Whatever is in here has to match identical to what's up here, and there cannot be a space in it. It oddly also cannot start with a number.
But as long as we use the dashes, we're good.
Yes. Yep. As long as whatever is in here matches here without any spaces in either of them. Now we can type in our color as blue and hit save and go back over, and we've got this should be blue. In blue. Preview.
Like a little dot,
If you hover over it, you can actually like pick exactly what color blue you want. And then when you save it, you'll see it goes to that color. Did it go away? Oh, yes, yes. Yeah, so sometimes you'll get a little squiggly in here. And I don't know if it will do it for me if I do this. No.
Okay, so I have another question, which is different.
No.
So when you're doing headings like that.
Yep.
You're using like H1, so if you're only using that particular like heading for like the font size, or is it like, should you use like H1s for all H1 headings, or?
Yeah, the idea is that like all things of the same heading size would all use an H1, and then you can use as many H1s as you want. And the browser puts in default styling for the H1, right? So if you wanted to, you could say, for some reason, I don't want the H1 to be that big on the blue one. I want it to be, I don't know, 18 px instead. You can save it and that will make just that one smaller. But yes, in general, all of your H1s would look similar to each other.
Okay, so is it more for like to make headings, or is it more for like just having like size indicators for certain text?
It's usually used for headings. It can be used for size, but in general, it can be used for both. It can go either way. Does everyone have Rain? What's up?
Okay, so I was able to create the web page pretty well. However, shouldn't the secondary heading be H2, being that hello world is H1, and technically it is secondary to the H1 header?
Or
we
this
want to
heading?
Yeah,
for
for
the heading 6, you mean?
No, for this should be blue. Well, I guess headings, for this should be blue. Shouldn't we use H2?
Not necessarily. Well, this is just a playground, so it doesn't really matter. You can have multiple H1s on a page, though. So think about if the New York Times has, 5 different articles, they all are going to have an H1 associated with them. You shouldn't have an H1 inside of an H1 or H6 inside of an H1, but we're just playing around with different headings at this point.
Okay.
But it is not invalid HTML to have multiple headings on the same page.
Thank you.
Just to be sure, so when we're setting like style, when we're styling certain tags, we want to use the ID attribute, so I wouldn't do like hashtag H1. Like I would set an ID for that if I have multiple of them, and then use the ID.
So that's a great question. What happens if we have multiple of them, right? What happens if I make another H1 down here and I say this is underlined and I want this to be underlined and I want this to be blue to be underlined? Well, the problem that we run into is that this is an ID. What do we know about IDs? They're identifiers, right? They're supposed to be unique, supposed to be. Your computer will not burst into flames if you reuse an ID, but for proper HTML, you're not supposed to reuse an ID. Instead, we reuse classes. So I say class equals, and I say underlined. I can also add my class underlined to my other H1. Now that didn't do anything. Why didn't that do anything? Well, I use this class called underlined, and it's like, what the heck is an underlined class? Well, in order to do that, just like we use the pound sign with IDs, we use the period sign with classes. So we say period, underlined, and then we tell it, hey, the text decoration is underlined. Now, what's that doing? How's the browser understanding that? First of all, it sees this period. That period says that must be a class. So it's going in and it's looking at all of the attributes named class. Now it's saying underlined. Okay, so it's going through and it matches on underlined and underlined. So it takes this CSS property called text decoration with the value of underline, takes this whole styling and applies it to the H1 right here and to the H1 down here because they both have the class of underline. Now you may notice that this is still in red. Why is that? Well, I've got my H1. All of my H1s are going to be red. But because I have blue heading on this, this blue heading cascaded over my H1 up here. Why did it override the H1 up here? Because cascading means that it went over and cascaded on top of this H1. Because this ID is more specific, because blue heading came after the H1 from up here, it is going to override whatever the styling is that came before it and apply the styling inside of here.
So is it possible, so if you move blue heading up, would it matter or no, because it's specified down at the bottom? So if you put hashtag blue heading above the H1 tag or the H1 styling indicators, or would it matter or no? Because
it won't matter because I believe the ID is more specific. So cascading style sheets look at the specificity. So in other words, it will always prioritize IDs. After it prioritizes IDs, it will prioritize classes. And after it prioritizes classes, it will prioritize the HTML element. So that's kind of getting into the specificity of how cascading style sheets work. But that's not to say that order doesn't matter. So if I've got two things in here, one that says bold, I can't think of an example off the top of my head. Let's say purple, and we say color is purple, and then we say pink, and we make the color pink. Actually, if we do, it's not a good example. Sorry, I can't think of one off the top of my head. Order does matter, but so does specificity. So in this case, it doesn't matter what we do it because the ID will override the class, which will override the H1 or the selector, the element selector. But there are times that you'll cascade over each other and you'll need to shuffle that out. Rain, did you have another question or is your hand still raised from last time? Sorry, I'm usually pretty good about lowering people's hands, but you cannot have multiple images in a source tag. I'm just seeing that question in chat. And Mel did paste a link for CSS specificity if you are interested in that. It's a fun word to say, specificity.
okay, so I just have one more question, sorry.
Yeah.
So for the underlying class, so whatever class, I mean, okay. So whatever tag you set that to, so like if we took the paragraph and class underlined it, it would be underlined as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Classes can be applied to any kind of element. You could theoretically apply the underlying class to an image. I don't think it would show anything up, but you can do that. And if you wanted multiple images, by the way, you would just use multiple image tags that would all close themselves. Instead of putting in multiple source tags into one image tag, you would do multiple image tags. And what that allows you to do is apply different classes or IDs to each one of the images to style them. Okay, we've got a couple minutes left. We're not going to cover anything new. We're going to switch back over. And don't be afraid to call me out on this if I forget to do this, but we want to capture some vocab here. So what are some terms, and I've got my eye on the chat, what are some terms that you've heard tonight that we want to capture in a definition for notes? Indicator. Tags. Put that on the same one. What do you mean by indicator? You mean the save indicator? Who said indicator? All right, we'll come back to that one. Identifier. I'm just going to say ID because we don't normally call them identifiers. And I will also add class while we're at it. Opening and closing tags.
The href.
An href. HTML body head. SRC. CSS property, CSS value, span tag.
Style.
Styling. We got SRC tag already. SRC, be careful. SRC is not actually a tag. It's an attribute within the image tag or element. Attributes. List. Do that as LI.
Extension.
Extension's a good one.
Selector, property, value.
Selector, property and value we have. I'm going to put CSS in front of this one. Say VS Code extension on this one. And LI, I'm going to do OL and then UL as well. We'll cover those. Body, we've got up here. Sure. H1. And put H6 through H6. We did attributes. I will attributes / value.
IMG.
Sure. All right, so I'm going to start defining these. We only have 3 minutes left, so if you want to stick around and hear more of my voice, I don't know what's wrong with you, but you're welcome to. I will run through the definitions of these. If you guys want to head out, that's also totally fine. And if you're stuck anywhere or have any questions at the for the end of class, go ahead and raise your hand virtually or in person, and I'll help you on that. I will try and get all of these terms in if I don't melt right now, and if not, I will do it after class and it will be ready for tomorrow. Yeah.
So this screen, I tried to like change my, I don't know, I'm in my settings and this screen won't go away. And I forgot how to like escape.
I just said cancel.
Yeah, it won't work though. Like it won't get out of that.
Okay, interesting. So to force quit, Option Command Escape, that's like your Control Alt Delete, and then you can force quit and it's gone.
Okay, so option command escape.
Option Command Escape, or if you forget, you can go to Apple in the top left and then down to force quit. Yes.
It was a silly question.
Yeah.
But when I open this, it always goes to Safari, but I have Google as my desktop as my.
I'm going to show that up here just so everyone can see it. If everything is opening in Safari and you're like, damn it, Apple, I don't love you that much. I am a Google person. If you go open any Chrome window, go to Chrome up in the top right, top left. Oh my God, don't give me directions on the way home. Chrome and then go down to settings. And then Google, believe it or not, is actually really good at search. So up in the search bar, if you just type in default browser, mine says Google is your default browser. Hopefully you've got a button to hit set as default browser and then you should be good to go. Yeah, search up at the top. And just do a search for default browser. It's not that Chrome necessarily is a better engine, answering a question in chat from Shay. Chrome has better developer tools than both Safari and Firefox. Every browser has its pros and its cons. For example, Safari has the best battery life of any of the web browsers. But you will find the majority of developers use Chrome, especially if they're developing anything on the front end, any websites. Chrome tends to have the best development tools. Once we get through front end, and if you're like, man, all I really want to do is get back to Safari and use that, you're totally welcome to. All of the browsers have developer tools. So if you're more comfortable in Safari and want to learn those developer tools, that's totally fine. But as we start working with the box model and inspect, which will be starting tomorrow, you may find it's easier to learn it in Chrome. And then down the road, like I said, you're always welcome to switch back to another browser. Any other questions for tonight?
Sorry, I have just one more.
Yeah.
Where did we go? So remember when we were setting up like our screen displays to arrange multiple displays?
Swipe up with 3 fingers.
Yeah, so I like that one, but there's also, somebody still had it, but you know how they
Stage
have-
Manager.
Yeah.
Do you want that on or off? Okay.
Is it in system settings? In the search stage.
Yep. If you want Stage Manager on, which kind of groups all of your windows together, Apple up at the top, system settings. If your Apple says system preferences instead of system settings, for the love of God, please update your operating system so we don't run into problems later. You cannot turn on Stage Manager unless you have updated to Ventura. So you go Apple system settings, over on the left, you do a search for Stage Manager. That should be the second one, and then you turn it on right here. And then once you turn it on there,
Oh, do I have to go here?
that one, yep. And there you go.
Okay, I think I'll leave that. No, it's like the 3 fingers and I love it. I use it, but maybe just when I get the monitor set up, it'll be more room, but I'm like literally.
That is why I give everyone the warning, like the first couple of weeks, it's going to be rough. Like we'll get over it. Trust me. A reminder to everyone that I will be fully virtual tomorrow. You are still welcome to come in. We are in that different room that's on the schedule. But up to you guys. Any final questions for tonight, remote or in person? Or from the other side? Okay. Thank you guys. Have an awesome night. I'll see you tomorrow.